Imagine writing an adventure like a pro, the way movies and novels and comic books are written. Their secret is that they don't just come up with stuff and roll on whatever comes next. They actually structure their stories with a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's foreshadowing, there are references. So let's try to do that in adventure writing. But this isn't easy to do in an RPG adventure. Most importantly, we have to know what are the basic building blocks of an adventure. In this video, I'm going to explain these building blocks, but you can learn more about them from my GM's guide, Algis Functions Write Amazing Adventures, that you can get at Drive-Thru-RPG. As discussed in another video, the adventure isn't the pre-written story of the fictional world. It's the interactions of the real-world players, including the GM. Certainly, we cannot write what other players will do, so the adventure we write will consist of interactions of the GM. Every building block is a way the GM affects one or more of the players. Each such interaction has a singular function, so I call these building blocks functions. Let's take the easiest case, when the GM applies a rule of the game system. That's a function. For example, a character is injured if the rule system handles injury. Or you ask for a skill check if that makes sense in the rule system you're using. Or the party is engaging in combat if the rule system has a combat subsystem. I call these mechanical functions because they are based on the game mechanics. We talked about a notation style in another video. It's very easy to write these functions in that notation style. The first part of the entry will be the rule that you're referencing, and the second part will be all the stats that you need to apply that rule. Technically, you could put a bunch of mechanical functions in a list and you're done with an adventure. There are no descriptions, no dialogue, nothing interesting going on, but technically it's an adventure. But we need functions for everything else too. If the mechanical functions are the game part of role-playing games, then we also need the role-playing part. But the role-playing part is so diverse that it seems impossible to break them down into discrete blocks. But we can break down these kind of interactions based on the purpose they have. In theory, every such interaction is a GM sharing some kind of information of the fictional world with the players, but we can look at the goal you want to achieve with it. Because all of these functions are basically in the same super category of sharing information with the players. You can come up with your own categorization, but these are the categories that I use and I think they should work well. If you want to tell players in what state their characters are, for example at the start of the adventure or after a time skip, that's narration. If you want the players to know how something looks like, that's a description. If you want the player to know what their character experienced that would otherwise not follow from all the other functions, for example, they have a dream or a hallucination, that's an experience. If you think that a character has some useful expertise that the player might not know, that's previous knowledge. If an NPC informs a character about some kind of news, that's informing. If an NPC expects a decision from a character, that's a question. If an NPC expects an action from a character, that's a request. If an NPC acts or an event happens, that's an action or event. If an action or event happens because of the party, that's a reaction. In the aforementioned notation style, the first part of an entry can be the category, and the second part of the entry can be the specific action or description or whatever it is. Now that we have the basic building blocks of the adventure, we can start creating structures, building adventures, etc. If you want to know more how to do this, check out Algis Functions Write Amazing Adventures. It includes 18 tools from the basic building blocks to campaign writing. Search Algis Functions at the Drive-Thru-RPG or go to algi.hu/functions. That's algi.hu/functions.